Hi, thanks for watching the video. Today I'm just going to discuss the biography of Umar Ibn Al Khattab, specifically things that Sunnis rarely mention or take into consideration. I think that many Sunnis don't understand that the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah didn't exist during the time of Umar. It didn't exist during the time of Abu Bakr, Uthman. It began with the Abbasid Caliphate, the end of the Abbasid Caliphate in what is now Iraq, and the emergence of the Ottoman Empire and an imam called Ibn Taymiyyah. So it's something that's very odd that many Sunnis don't know is that their religion, even though it's displayed as the following of the Prophet, it wasn't around in the Prophet's time. The Shia, on the other hand, existed during the time of the Prophet. These were the followers. Shia means followers. These were the followers of Imam Ali. They fought battles with him, with the Prophet. And then immediately after the passing of the Prophet, may Allah be pleased with him, they supported Imam Ali as the rightful caliph. So the Shia have been around much longer than the Sunnis, and I think many Sunnis don't understand that. But anyways, the focus of this video today is facts about Umar ibn Khattab that many Sunnis don't know or intentionally ignore or fail to even bring up or discuss. So Umar ibn Khattab was born in Mecca. He was of the Quraysh. His father was Al Khattab ibn Nufayl, who was a merchant. He was actually, pretty well known as a mediator, as a merchant. They were idol worshippers. He was a very extremist sort of idol worshipper. And they died as idol worshippers. They never converted to Islam. History shows that Omar's father was very harsh with him, that he beat him, that he made him do very tedious manual labor. And Umar al-Khattab converted to Islam. Some sources say 39, some say 30 to 35. But we can just say well into his 30s, he accepted Islam. Umar al-Khattab, before accepting Islam, was on his way to kill the Prophet. He had drawn a sword and he was heading there to kill the Prophet. So before he accepted Islam, he actually wanted to kill the Prophet. And the story is that on his way to kill the Prophet, one of the Prophet's companions said, "Hey, why do you want to kill the Prophet? Your sister has accepted Islam as well as your brother-in-law." So Omar's reaction to that was he went and he basically beat up his sister and his brother-in-law. Before beating up his sister and brother-in-law, he had displayed his hate for Islam. And there are multiple narrations of him beating slave girls that accepted Islam. There's other narrations that his views towards women were typical of men in the 7th century pagan Arabia time. But his behavior was always more violent and more aggressive than others. So Omar was an idol worshiper who was beaten by his father. He had a rough, upbringing. His father was a very shrewd businessman. And for the majority of his adult life, I mean, leading into his 30s, he was an idol worshiper and a very outspoken enemy of Muslims and the Prophet himself. And he showed that through his actions, which was violence. He beat slave women. He assaulted his own sister and brother-in-law. He would insult Muslims. He was very outspoken that this Islam ideology was a threat to his pagan belief, and he showed that dislike in a very violent way. And there are many, many narrations about him beating female slaves, torturing them, insulting them, verbal abuse, etc. In this book, Adwa al-Bayan, there is a narration about him burying his baby. It says, وَقَدْ جَاءَ عَنْ عُمَرَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ قَوْلُهُ. This is basically saying that in the time of ignorance, there's one thing that made him cry and one thing that made him laugh. What made him cry was that he buried his baby daughter, and while he was burying her, she was dusting off the sand from his beard. Like basically showing him affection, dusting off the sand from his beard while he was burying her and putting sand over her to, bury her alive. The thing that made him laugh was that while he was an idol worshiper, he would make idols out of dates, and then when he would get hungry, he would eat the dates. Okay. So there's actually a verse in the Quran that says وَإِذَا الْمُوَدَّةُ سُئِلَتْ. So it's basically when the baby that was buried alive is asked, what did you do to deserve that? It's referring to the Day of Judgment. And there's other Quranic verses that say, don't do this. Okay. So, I mean, I'm just mentioning the verse to confirm that burying babies was something that Arabs did in the time of ignorance. And there's a narration that Omar himself did it. Whether or not this narration is true or not, we don't know. We were never there, but there is a narration nevertheless. Then it says here that basically in Sahih al-Bukhari, which is the number one book that the Sunnis follow after the Quran itself. And it narrates that basically Umar, when he accepted Islam, he was afraid that the other idol worshippers would kill him. And only when another prominent idol worshipper gave him protection, that basically said nobody can kill Omar, did he continue on with his quest to embrace Islam. So this is very contrary to how Omar is portrayed in Sunni narrations as being this sort of valiant, courageous person who would put his life on the line for the religion of God. Because here in this narration, he was afraid to even admit that he was going to become Muslim because he was worried that the other idol worshippers would kill him. So, up until the conversion, he's not converted yet, but he's about to convert. You have someone who's in their mid-30s who grew up in sort of under an abusive father. He was violent towards women many times. He beat up his own sister. He may have buried his own daughter. There are multiple narrations that he did in fact worship an idol made out of dates, and then when he got hungry, he would eat the dates. So this is the class of individual that we're talking about. And just to be clear, there is nothing either narrated by the Prophet or in the Quran that makes it illegal or makes it forbidden to study the companions of the Prophet, study the caliphs, question whether or not history was right about them and the narrations were right about them. Islam is it says multiply multiple times in the Quran. Those who yafqahun, ya'qilun, those who use their brains, that understand. So Islam is a religion of thinking and understanding, and we have to, you know, think about these historical narrations and really question them in order to believe in them. Okay? So, some Sunnis will get angry that you bring up their own books. Is it that sort of like Omar is somebody that should never be studied, should never be questioned, which is totally false. Uh, then after his conversion, his becoming Muslim, there's actually a ayah in the Quran that was revealed um, against Abu Bakr and Umar. And we'll leave Abu Bakr out of this, but we'll just focus on. And basically, it was like they were arguing in the presence of the Prophet, disrespecting him. And here is the chapter and the verse. Okay, so one has to, because the question is, did Omar really love the Prophet? This is somebody who hated Muslims all till he was in his mid-30s. He beat his slave. He would do sort of very cowardly violence, not courageous violence, because he would beat his female slave. And then when it came to basically announcing that he was going to become a Muslim, he was in a state of fear. So he wasn't willing to, he wasn't courageous in a way that was noble. He was violent. And why do I say that? I say that based off of the documentation and the sources, and sources that Sunnis themselves accept. I'm not saying this out of my own imagination. Okay? So here you have in Bukhari that he was afraid to even accept Muslim because they would kill him. He wasn't willing to die for Islam, at least in this moment. But let's arrive until basically the time of his conversion. He was an idol worshiper up until well into his adulthood. Not something like, just some mistakes that he made when he was a young teenager. No, he was in the mid-30s when he accepted Islam. And by that time, he had committed many, many grave sins. He'd beaten slave women. He beat up his sister. He wanted to kill the Prophet. Now, this is how loving the Prophet was, how loving Islam was, that would basically forgive anybody who came with the intention to seek the word of God. But let's just take, a modern day example. Let's say that you're a follower of you attend a mosque in Europe, in the US, in the Middle East, wherever. And there's a person who beat up members of the mosque because he hates Islam. He's a bigot. And at one time he even has the intention to go and kill the leader of your mosque. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, he reads the Quran and he becomes convinced, and he converts. Which there are actually modern day stories about this. There's a story about a U.S. Marine who wanted to go and blow up a mosque or to commit violence against a mosque, and he goes in the mosque. He meets a woman from the mosque, and she's so nice, and he basically starts to think twice and learns about Islam and becomes a Muslim, and that's amazing. And I commend Omar for making that conversion. But it doesn't mean that Marine who wanted to blow up the mosque is the right person to lead the mosque, and that all the Muslims in that mosque should now pray behind this man. Why? Because there will be many, many people in that mosque who are much more qualified. Okay, people who were born Muslim, who studied Islam all their lives, and it's important in leadership that we pick the best leaders. That doesn't mean that we can't accept somebody who did regretful things in the past, that they shouldn't be companions of the Prophet. We shouldn't revere them. We shouldn't honor them. But when it comes to choosing a leader of the Islamic nation, which is a very, very big responsibility, it's hard for me to imagine that there were no other companions who were more qualified than Omar, considering the history, considering his history. Why? Because with such a history, there is a possibility that that individual would then change and turn against Islam and not lead the Ummah in the right way. Okay? So we can respect somebody and we can say that there were, commend them for accepting Islam and contributing to Islam, but that doesn't necessarily make them fit for leadership. So this is after he had accepted Islam, and there was a Quranic verse basically telling the Muslims what not to do, telling the Prophet what Muslims should not do. And they were specifically talking about Abu Bakr and Umar. Chapter 49, verse 2. Any of you can go and read the tafsir on this ayah, and this verse, and you will see, that it's about Abu Bakr and Umar. There's another narration in Bukhari that after the Prophet had died, that the Ansar, okay, the Ansar and Muhajirin are two groups that were very close to the Prophet, and that the Ansar had wanted Sa'd bin Ubaidah to be the caliph after the Prophet's death, and that he mysteriously died. And one of the Ansar accused Omar of killing Sa'd bin Ubaidah. And Omar's reply here in Bukhari was, Allah killed him. Now, why would Omar say that? Why would he say that? This is in Bukhari 6830, book 86, hadith 56. He says, فَقُلْتَ قَتَلَ اللَّهُ سَعْدَ bin Ubadah. Why would Omar say, how would he know that? Right? So there are questions that Omar was responsible for the killing of one of the Prophet's companions after the Prophet's death over leadership issues. Now, if we go back to this ayah where there was arguments, it had to do with leadership dispute. Okay? They disagreed in the presence of the prophets over the recommended leadership of a tribe, a delegation of Banu Tamim. So here you have Omar, who before he accepted Islam would beat up Muslims, insult them, wanted to kill the Prophet because he saw them as a threat to his beliefs and leadership. Then you have him become a Muslim, and an ayah is revealed telling him basically don't raise your voice and argue in front of the Prophet, because he was arguing about what? Leadership. Then you have here in Bukhari one of the Ansar accusing him of killing a companion because he didn't agree with his leadership. Then you have the famous incident, Raziyat al-Khamis, where the Prophet was on his deathbed and he asks the companions to bring him a pen and paper so that I may write something for you after which you will never go astray. Now, one would think that the Prophet wants to write something, people would rush with the pen and paper so that he would write that message. But not Omar. Omar said, oh, leave him. There's even some narrations that Omar said he was delirious, which is kind of insulting, very insulting to the Prophet, and refused to bring that pen and paper, and the Prophet never was able to write that message. Okay. Then we have battles. There are many narrations, not just from one battle, not just from two battles, not from three, but from 4 separate occasions where Omar was narrated as fleeing from battle. So many Sunnis believe that Omar was this valiant warrior that was willing to die for Islam or the Prophet at any moment. But history shows that that is absolutely not the case. At the Battle of Uhud, he was among those who fled. There's even a Quranic verse that talks about this. Battle of Hunain, Omar retreated in panic. Battle of Khaybar, Omar was among those who fled at Khaybar under severe pressure. So again, Omar, based on the sources, based on history, not based on feelings, not based on what your grandfather or your father told you about Omar, not based on some, pride, but about facts. This is about facts and sources. Showed that Omar was not brave when it came to Islam. He was brave. He was violent. He beat up women. But when it came to converting to Islam, he was in a state of fear because he didn't want to be killed by the other idol worshippers. When it came to fighting for the Prophet in Islam, he retreated from all the battles. They even say that Omar conquered Persia, but that's completely false. Omar never stepped foot in Persia. He only gave orders to his generals who were many, many, many hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away in Persia fighting while he was in Medina. He just wrote orders on pen and paper. Then, when he was caliph, for example, there is a narration in Sunni books, Musnad Ahmad, where a woman was accused of committing adultery. She was brought to Omar. Omar said she should be stoned. And Imam Ali passed by and said that basically this woman is retarded. She's handicapped, so she shouldn't be stoned. And Omar said, "Oh yeah, you're right," and released the woman. So I understand, like, how can you be a caliph and not know the difference about stoning a retarded woman or not? This is in Sunni books. Then, of course, one of the most regretful things is the multiple narrations about him going to the house of the daughter of the Prophet and calling for it to be set on fire. He kicked the door open, and that door, and a nail that was in the door, some object, blunt object, hit the stomach of Fatima alayhi salam, causing her to have a miscarriage, and she died about 6 months after that incident. So that on itself, this is in Tariq al-Tabari, which is also this is a revered Sunni book. This is in Sunni books. This incident of him attacking the house of Fatima is well documented. It's a very long, there's a lot of analysis on this, but I won't get into that. But this is, again, and this is in line with who he was. He beat up his sister, beat up his brother-in-law, beat up female slaves, wanted to kill the Prophet. And, on multiple occasions, he disrespected the Prophet. There's many other narrations about that. I won't get into all of them. But these are just some key facts about Umar Ibn Al Khattab that many Sunnis ignore or fail to mention. And it begs the question, why was he chosen as second caliph? Did the Islamic Ummah not have anybody better? So this really begs the question. It's something that we ask about our many leaders of Muslim countries today, such as, for example, Jolani in Syria. There's many very well educated Syrians, very well, much more qualified than Jolani, but why is Jolani in power? Anyways, that's another situation, but these are some key facts about Umar Ibn Al Khattab that many people don't know, and my goal here is to just make people aware. Thank you.